Hey guys, and welcome back to the final session of Husband Coaching. My name is Warren Maynard, the Executive Director of Impact Players, and I'm thrilled to have with me for our final session, Coach Matt Wimmer, as we talk about course corrections. Transitions and moves in life can often provide both opportunities for growth and some critical challenges, and it's crucial to know when to close one chapter and begin another one. So today we're going to be exploring how to navigate these transitions effectively and ensure a strong foundation for our marriage. So Coach, you have had many turns and twists like all of us. How have you managed to navigate the tension between having a plan and making course corrections when the plan gets turned upside down?
Yeah, when the plan gets turned upside down. That's a good way to phrase it. In the playbook, it talks about that we make plans, but the Lord determines our steps. And it's interesting. I am a planner, so by nature, I like to have a plan, and I think at this stage of life, I've certainly learned, to hold those plans loosely. I even learned that as a father when we would do the family meetings, and I would always have a plan for the Sunday night, and it never went according to plan. In the earlier years, that would somewhat exasperate me, and then I learned to just enjoy it, enjoy the process, enjoy the direction we went. Same thing in planning a date with Cindy. So my wife, I would have a game plan, and it would never go according to plan. I would want to maybe walk on the boardwalk, and she'd prefer to walk on the sand. But it always turned out better. And so again, I think it was learning to hold those plans, have a plan, but hold those plans very loosely. So,
and it's interesting when you think about plans. Every married couple that I know has spent time in preparation for their wedding day. They plan out the wedding, they plan out the flowers, they plan out the music, they plan out the meal and all of those things, and they plan out the vows. They think about it, and they really want to make sure that they say it the way that their heart reflects that. But how often do we go back and review our vows? And maybe like you, maybe like me, many times we can say, well, I can't remember the last time I looked at my wedding vows. But why is it important to continually review your vows or your goals, your dreams, your vision for your marriage?
Oh, you're asking me the question? No, I can't say that I've recently reviewed my wedding vows. So that'll be a good challenge for me after doing this husband coaching. But I guess if I were to review those, it would be a very good reminder that it's whether in sickness or in health or whether in plenty or in want, that what God has brought together, let no man separate. And so I think that's a good challenge and a good reminder that even 28 plus years later, she is still the woman of my dreams and beyond what I could have imagined in a wife. And those vows were a covenant before God. They were a covenant before God and man, but most importantly before God, that I would be the man that she needs me to be. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure that even if it's been a while since you've looked at the vows, on some level, you're going back and thinking about and talking about what are our goals?
Mm.
What is our vision for
Yeah.
our family, for our marriage? Why is it important to continually revisit those things when we think about course corrections? When we think about when the plan gets knocked upside down, why is it important to know the vision of your marriage?
Well, I think that creates the roadmap. It creates the dream with some substance to it. When the course corrections come, it ensures that we can get back on track together, as quickly as possible. So I think that's why that's important to revisit those things. I think it's certainly a great practice to do on our date nights. How are we doing? As a couple, and that question is a great way to get back on path, for the dream and the path that we together have established. So,
yeah, and I think throughout life there are going to be all kinds of course corrections. I can think of in my life many things like moving to a new city, to start a new career, to continue my education, walking away from a long time position, losing a job, all of those things, seeing loved ones die and having to begin a new chapter. All those were opportunities to course correct. There are a few that we're going to talk about today that are pretty standard, that most families will expect and anticipate, and yet they're not always ready for. So the first course correction that I want us to talk about is living together alone. And perhaps you and your spouse have moved away from school or family or your community support system, and this can create a unique tension as you seek to navigate marriage from a new place. Man, I'm thinking about that new couple that they're just getting started in their marriage. They don't have any kids yet. They're trying to figure out, what does this mean to be a married couple, and maybe their setting has changed. And so it's a time of course correction. So what steps or advice would you give to a young couple who are navigating this new phase? And what advice, what about the feelings of worry or disorientation or isolation, unpreparedness that they may feel heading into this season that they're in?
I think the first thing, if we're moving away from family and living alone, I think the first thing would be is finding a fellowship, and certainly finding a fellowship that the two of you can join and be a part of, and then I would say finding a small group. I mean, and what I mean by that is as a couple. So, I think it's really important as a couple to find other couples. They don't necessarily have to be in the same space, although that wouldn't be a bad thing. To find other couples that are, walking through life, that they can learn from, that they can share with, that they can build friendships with. So.
That's a great piece of advice that I think a lot of times gets neglected. People are trying to get their career started. They're trying to get their house all situated or their apartment all situated. They're figuring out each other, and yet at the same time find that community, that support system, a local church body, a small group that you can be a part of, and continually seeking out God together as a couple. The book of Psalms says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." And I think that's a great reminder that God's word has the truth that we need for every step that we're in. And certainly another course correction that most couples are going to find themselves in is when they get to course correct number 2, which is bundle of joy. Finding out that you're about to become a father is one of the most exciting and terrifying moments in a man's life. And this is a perfect time to communicate your goals, commitments, and expectations of yourself, your spouse, and your child. Now, maybe you can go back in time and remember that moment when you realized, I'm about to become a dad. And what advice would you give to a new dad who's trying to prepare for this major change in the relationship between him and his spouse?
Yeah, I think I wish someone had shared with me, that, just your wife can do no wrong. She can do no wrong in those, we'll call it, first 2 years. She can do no wrong, and be there for her. Again, this is that investment that we're making in the emotional relationship. And in about 18 months, after the birth, you'll finally get your wife back. And what I mean by that is, her body is going through so much during that time that oftentimes she doesn't even remember certain conversations or certain things that she's saying. It just goes through so much turmoil. So she can do no wrong. Take great care of her heart. You will get your wife back in about 18 months and learn to change a diaper. So, yeah.
Learn to change a diaper. That's a good one. I don't know about you, Matt, but I had never changed a diaper before my kids were born.
Yeah.
And I actually count this as a badge of honor, but I got to change both of my children's first diaper.
Oh, that's good.
Like that was, Leah was in, recovery. And so I got the joy, the badge of honor of being able to change that first diaper. And, there's a major learning curve.
Oh yeah, there
right?
is. Yeah.
And I think anytime that you find something intimidating that you don't know, there's two different ways that you can respond to it. You can retreat and say, I'm out. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel overwhelmed. I'm scared. Or you can attack it.
Yeah.
And you can say, I'm going to learn everything I can about how to be a great dad, how to raise my kids. And so, we read books. We went through workbooks together. We took classes together. We were always trying to learn how to be better parents, and we made lots of mistakes, which is a part of the learning process. There's a huge joke about the care that you take with the first child compared to the care that you take with the second child. You start realizing that certain things aren't as important as you thought they were. But what I think is so important is that we go through that learning process together, that we both admit that we don't know what we're doing, and we reach out together for help. We're willing to ask our parents for help. We're willing to ask more experienced couples for help, and have a little bit of a sense of humor during this season. Because if you don't, you'll be pulling your hair out. And the scriptures say, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love. Ephesians 4:2. I think it's a great reminder for couples that are in that new phase of children, because if you don't have patience, if you can't,
or humility or
bear with one another in love, you're going to be unbearable to be around. Third course correct is, my sweet children are becoming teenagers. Many times over the years, I've had people come to me and say, I don't know what happened. My little girl, my little boy was so sweet, and then all of a sudden he or she turned into a menace, a monster, a diva, a problem. And of course we know that our kids aren't problems, but they can throw us for a loop during that age where we've got to make some course corrections. Many marriages find they need a course correction as their children enter into adolescence. As kids begin to exercise their independence, they also find themselves struggling to determine their identity. Additionally, their schedules are often becoming exceedingly complicated, and the way that we relate to our teenagers begins to change as well. So Matt, I know that you've pretty recently gone through this phase and are still in some ways going through this phase of course correction, but what challenges did having teenagers present to how you relate with your spouse? And what advice would you give to fathers of new teenagers as it relates to marriage?
Yeah, so we have graduated 3 through the teenage years, and I think as I referenced earlier, the dynamics change in the father-child relationship, and thankfully I learned this early that those coaching years had passed. I was now moving into the cheering years, being a biggest fan, and so that was also something that I reminded my wife about as well. Our son probably wasn't going to be as receptive to the hugs and the kisses from mom, or even necessarily having mom take care of every need. I think that's natural. I think that's part of becoming a man, and especially as he was beyond those teenage years and now entering adulthood. It's a healthy thing for a young man to be, leaving the nest, if you will. And so I constantly had to remind her of that. That being said, I think for our teenage sons, it's important for them to hear that I love you is very, very important. I think I am proud of you, and I believe in you, and that you have what it takes. Those things, along with that God does have a special a purpose for our sons. With daughters, it's, I think, important to maintain a physical touch as long as possible. And those can come in the forms of hugs, just warm fatherly hugs. Our daughters, same thing, are potentially going to break from mom, and I think that's natural, and we become more important in the relationship as they're, whether they realize it or not, figuring out what they're ultimately going to look for in a spouse or mate. So I think it's being cognizant of that, because that can be very difficult for our wives sometimes, and we can still share with them that this is a natural progression, and that their daughters still love them, and some moms that maintain a very special relationship with their daughters, so it's not always the case. But it's so important for our daughters to hear I love you, and that I'm proud of you, and that you are lovely. I think that I'm always remembering that even though my daughters are now grown, there's still those little girls every once in a while that twirl in the dress and say, Daddy, how do I look? And how important it is in those moments to respond with, what a lovely girl, what a lovely, beautiful girl, on the outside and on the inside. And reminding them that God does have a special purpose, for them, a special plan for our sons, a special purpose for our daughters. So I think those are all important, and the whole time just navigating those times with our wives as our children naturally are testing kind of the boundaries, and again, it's that adage of the nest, and they're starting to flap the wings and really begin to preparing for launch, preparing to jump. So those can be fun and exciting years. So.
They are, and that's a great insight. And I think, as I think about what you're sharing, I think for me, in addition to that, just the need to balance between having very strong convictions and saying, hey, this is the way that we want our kids to be raised, and we're not going to concern ourselves with what everybody else's teenage kids are doing, but this is how we do things in our house. Those convictions are really, really important, and I think our kids need to see husband and wife unified on what those convictions are. But then on the other side, I think, is a sense of humor and a sense of fun and play, and we can't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that happens as kids enter into the teen years is they begin to see our weaknesses. They begin to realize that we're not the all-powerful superhero who can do no wrong, but we have our own flaws. We have our own intricacies. We have our own things that we do that can be a source of humor for the whole family. Take for instance, in my home, since I get up hours earlier than everyone else, who do you think the one is that's always falling asleep on the couch at the end of the night? It's me. And they have a thing where they love to take photos of me asleep on the couch and then text it to me when I wake up. And I could get upset about that or, take it seriously, but we make a joke out of it. And we allow our kids to see, hey, mom and dad, we don't think about ourselves as so important that we can't have a little fun. And that gives them the opportunity to then realize, okay, I can be okay if somebody, says something and everybody's laughing. I can have a little bit of a sense of humor about the situation that I'm in. And honestly, it makes it so much more fun.
Sure.
When you have the security of strong boundaries and yet the joy of being able to let loose and know that in our home we're really comfortable being around each other. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 12 says, a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. So I think that's a great picture for those teenage years, is to say, hey, in this house, we have each other's back.
Yeah.
We're going to support one another and love one another. And certainly as a couple, we're going to do that. So let's talk about course correct number 4, Home Alone, the sequel, the empty nest. So now is the perfect time to double down on your marriage investment. Look for opportunities to grow closer together and explore each other's interests further and take on new challenges, go new places, and keep growing. So, Coach, both of us are preparing for this phase ourselves, the empty nest, Home Alone, the sequel phase. What are you doing in your marriage to adjust to life with no kids at home?
Well, we're certainly making plans. I think for the last several years, we've been making plans for what this new phase is going to look like. And a lot of that has to do with what does our day-to-day look like. And again, it takes us all the way back, I think, to session 1, in that the original design was for man and woman to walk together shoulder by shoulder in the garden with the Lord. And so I think it's a great season of life to explore what are those gifts, what are those talents that we uniquely have been given as individuals, and then how do those complement one another? And is there something that we could do together that would bring a complement of those, and that we would find great, an inexpressible and glorious joy from together? So I think that's certainly an area that we've made plans in, exploring really over the last several years, and I think we've found that now as far as a good rhythm together where we're complementing one another and I think for any couple, those can come in the forms of looking for opportunities for volunteering, and an organization that you would have a shared interest in. Probably going to be led by her, at least initially, but maybe our hearts can be drawn too. So, and I think Cindy and I have found that and are really enjoying leaning into that. So,
yeah, that's a great reminder that entering into that time of empty nest, it's not just about, oh, we get to do what we want to do, but now we have a greater freedom to serve others, to make a difference, to make an impact in the lives of others. And the truth is that if you've made it through the first 3 course corrections and you're now in the 4th one, you probably have something to offer to somebody in an earlier phase of life. And so how can you pour back and invest in one another? I think I would just say that if you have struggled to find those regular times together, those date nights, those special moments, this is the time to really double down on that. And a lot of times men come to me and they say, we don't really know what to do. We don't know what to talk about. We don't know how to engage in relationship because our lives got so consumed with managing the busyness of our children's schedule that we kind of lost touch with one another. And that's a scary moment for some couples, but I think the great thing is that now you've got a whole new season of life to reinvigorate that aspect of your marriage. And Job chapter 12, verse 12 says, wisdom is with the aged and understanding in length of days. So you have wisdom now that you can share with one another, that you can pass on to others, and enjoy those days together. Well, Matt, as we bring this video series to an end, I want to just give one opportunity to ask you, as we've talked about so many subjects under the heading of husband coaching. Is there any final advice that you would give to our men about how they can be great husbands to their brides?
Probably I would conclude with, I'm trying to think of, last words, right? Last words are very important. So, is there any final advice? I think just the simple question, how, or tell me, so my wife's name is Cindy. Tell me about Cindy. I think that would be the question. Because that question hopefully reveals the condition of her heart. And in asking that question, tell me about Cindy, then hopefully I can be in tune if there's a need to encourage, if there's a need to, again, build her up, or just have a pulse on, how I'm doing. And I think that's a good question to ask also is, how am I doing as a husband? And not trying to defend if I don't like the answer, but truly listening. So those would be probably the 2 things that I would leave you men with, is just tell me about you and tell me about how you feel I'm doing. So
that's great. Man, I would just encourage you with this truth as well, that when it comes to your marriage, there is no cruise control. Keep your hands on the steering wheel and never stop making the adjustments that you need in order to keep your marriage fresh, to keep it growing, to keep it vibrant, and to keep it going. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this husband coaching cohort series. I want to extend one more thank you to Coach Matt Wimmer for being a part of this Impact series and for all that he's done to help make Impact Players be the amazing program that it is. We want to conclude with our scripture memory verse and best verse. Guys, as we wrap this up, Don't forget to come prepared to share your best verse from Proverbs chapter 3 using the ABC Bible study method. And be sure to memorize our scripture memory verse for this week, Ephesians 4:2. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Guys, we look forward to seeing you in our other Impact Coaching cohorts. Be sure to check out our website for all the different options that we have to help provide the resources and the tools that you need to be the great husband, father, and leader that you want to be and that God's called you to be. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.